All right, this is the one that maybe you've been waiting for. I don't know. It's all about training and discipline. Guys, if you have kids, I don't know. I mean, this is like the one thing that you're like, you want to make sure you do well. We receive calls often, and this is usually the call. Help, my child is insert the undesired behavior, despite giving them consequences, and nothing is working, right? Does anybody ever felt that way as a parent? Now, again, if you have if your oldest is maybe 6 months old, and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But we felt like when your kid reaches about 15 months, that's when you start to see them start to insert their own will, right? And you start to see behavior stuff coming out. And you're like, what in the world? What do I do? What do I do, right? And then you're like not sure what you do, and your spouse and you are not on the same page. And next thing you know, you have a 2, 3. Now, people call it trouble twos? Guys, it's not trouble twos. It's like terrible threes and
4, 5, 6.
It's like the four is like the worst, okay? Like that you like the fours? Fours are like
It's rough at 6 again.
His brother 6 again. Okay, well, I don't know, but we felt like 2 was like a breeze, and then the 3's hit, and then the 4's hit, and maybe it was just our current 6-year-old that has gone through that. We're like, that was hard. We're not going to really actually talk about discipline, by the way. The way I think about discipline, or the way that we're usually thinking about discipline, is more about the consequences after a kid does a behavior that we don't like. Right? We're going to talk about, and that's all reactive. What I mean by reactive is your kids do something and you have to respond. That's discipline. We're going to talk about training. Okay? Because when that phone call comes and they say, help, I need help, here's what I ask them. Have you proactively trained them in that desired behavior that you want? Have you actually proactively trained them? See, many parents overlook the pre-work that's needed to shape their children's behavior and instead only rely on consequences or reactive parenting, which most of the time that leaves parents feeling helpless and hopeless and exhausted. Amen? Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I believe that if you focus 80% of your time and energy in training, you'll only spend 20% of your time in the discipline department. Do you guys hear what I'm saying? Yeah. If you spend 80% of your time training, then you only spend 20% of your time disciplining.
I think just even going off of the team analogy, training is something we totally understand when we think about sports, or music, or of course I'm going to spend hours every day training to play football or whatever it is. But it's so funny when it comes to being a parent, we don't think that proactively, not naturally, unless it was it was an example that was passed on to you when you grew up. I did not have that example growing up, and so I didn't, until I was in the hustle and bustle of my kids are misbehaving, then it's react, and sometimes it's hard to realize, I gotta take a lot of steps back and realize, okay, how do I get my team going in the right direction? If people train for hours and hours to do a sport, sometimes it's we react to our kids because we're embarrassed about their behavior instead of thinking, oh, it was a gap in my parenting. I didn't spend the time training them in this. I shouldn't expect them to know how to do it. Could you imagine a football coach looking at his players going, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And it was that was the first day they showed up all season, was at the game. It doesn't, of course that wouldn't happen. So that's why as parents we have to spend so much time in the training, which I'm sure you're going to talk about more practically.
Yeah. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4 says, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord, right? We're talking about training our children. Next slide. Many of us, we probably feel like we're drowning in this department. Right? Do you guys ever feel like you're drowning in the department of your kids' behavior? And so we want to give you a tool that has helped us. It's called CPR, okay? To help you not drown as a parent. And those 3 things are communicate, practice, and reinforce. Okay, that's the next slide. Communicate, practice, and reinforce. You guys see CPR right there? Did you guys catch the CPR thing, the picture? Okay, so what that looks like, Angela already just said that, but if pick any undesired behavior, okay? I mean, we have a list, right? Here's a list of a bunch of behavior things right here, right? There's 12 of them, right? Have you ever had your kid not come to you when you said come? Never. How many of you expect your kids to come when you say come and they come? Versus how many times you have to say, come to 3. If once I count to 3, like we say, listen, you can actually not count to 3 ever again if you just communicate, practice, and reinforce. Here's what it looks like. Okay, mom and dad are going to communicate our expectations to you, 2-year-old. Watch what mom and dad does. And so we either role play it ourselves, or we take the dolls or the toys and we role play it. And we say, here's what it looks like. We communicate, demonstrate basically visually to them what our expectation is, because they a lot of times maybe don't even know, right? Like Angela just said. So we communicate. And so I pretend I'm the kid, and I say, Angela says, okay, come here. And I say, yes, mommy. And I come, and I right away, quickly, completely, and cheerfully, right? And so we come and we demonstrate that. We do that over and over again. We communicate. Now it's your turn. Okay, come here, Remy, right? And Remy then, is expected. And we keep doing this and demonstrating. The P is practice. And this is where we have practice times throughout the day already in some of our routines. But a lot of times we even do the practice when the behavior doesn't happen. So instead of just saying, you didn't come, we're going to discipline you, we say, hey, let's practice right now. Let's go. Come, it's practice time, it's training time. So we say, all right. And kids, I don't know what it is, but they love this stuff. They're like, oh, we're practicing. And so because it's not like this high emotion situation, we don't try to train when you're high emotionally or your kids' emotions are high, right? But think about that. So you practice that over and over and over again until that desired behavior becomes second nature. And then you reinforce it. What I mean by reinforce is a lot of times we say, thank you for obeying. You obeyed mommy and daddy. Or, hey, that was very kind. We try to use Galatians chapter 5:22, right? Where it talks about the fruits of the Spirit. We don't say good job. Good job is so vague. It doesn't mean anything. We try to put actual meaning to words where we say, you showed self-control. You showed gentleness. Thank you for showing gentleness. So we reinforce. Now you can decide what kind of ways you want to reinforce your kid. You want to give them something because they did something? Great. If you want to reinforce it through consequences, hey, we're taking away a toy because you didn't do what we asked. So we're taking that toy away. Whatever consequence or way that you're going to positive reinforce your kids, make sure you're on the same page with your spouse. Try to make sure that the consequence, if you're doing a consequence, is related to the actual thing that happened, and be consistent in that approach every time. Does that make sense? See, if you went through all these 12 things and you tried to do CPR with all those things, and you proactively trained your children, you would be surprised at how much less discipline you would have to do if you just CPR. Amen? So next slide. Think about this. In your car ride home or on your way, this is your homework assignment. Discuss how you would react to the following situations if you were to apply CPR to it. I want you guys literally all right, what happens if our child says no to us? How can we CPR this? What if our child throws a tantrum in the store? How can we CPR this? Again, that's where the huddle up thing comes in place. You can train your kids. Your child hits another child. Guys, that is the worst. When your kid hits another kid at church or wherever, it's you don't feel like you feel like you're the worst parent in the world. Let's move to the next slide. I think we want you to have this picture. This really helped us. What we're trying to this really goes along with training and discipline, because honestly, the higher your connection is, and the higher your expectations can be. Right? The lower your connection is, well, if you try to have high expectations with low connection, it's just not going to work. right? Oftentimes, I mean, obviously, you know what it looks like when you have high connection and low expectations. This is like, I just want to be my kid's friend. You know, that we're not really, you know, we're just, you know, loosey-goosey about rules. Like, just as long as they feel like I'm their friends, right? That's that one. And then low expectations, low connection. This is where in the picture of the dads that we had yesterday, where it said ignorant and irresponsible. This is more like ignorant parent, uninvolved parent. This is what we don't want, right? We want authoritative. I know that maybe sounds weird, but that's what it is called in psychology. And so this is where you have warmth and open communication, but there's standards and there's support. And you are saying, hey, here's our vision. But if you can actually calibrate your expectations if you calibrate the connection in your kids. I feel like most of the time our kids are not behaving because they feel not connected to us. And so we always talk about connection first, correction first. And so just some things to think about with that. Amen? We're going to come and land here, guys, with some reflection questions. What are some reasons why you struggle to take on more of a proactive training approach versus a reactive discipline approach? Maybe share with each other your experiences with training growing up, whether it be sports, music, martial arts, school, whatever. Are there any takeaways that you can from those experiences that you can implement with your parenting? And then when it comes to the quadrant, which one do you think you are most likely that you usually lean towards? And back up your reasoning, kind of talk through that together and go from there. Go to the next 2 slides away from here, Brian. Resource page, guys. Any of these books. Remember I said I'm not qualified. I don't have a doctorate degree. But here's the thing. I'm going to try to get my PhD in parenting. And that means I'm going to read as many books as I can on parenting. All these books we've read, we read books on parenting all the time. Probably maybe too much because I need to probably read more books on like being a better husband at times. But these are the books. And then the next slide, these are the podcasts. Any of these podcasts, easy to listen to. Listen to any of them. Saturate yourself with these things. Become a PhD. Get your PhD in parenting and really saturate yourself in that. Amen?